Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Thank you Anjali, Pawan, Karan, and there are so many people who have requested for this topic, and that is called framework of organizational behavior. It is a very important topic. So this is another very important topic from organizational behavior. I've already covered certain topics on organizational behavior. In fact, I have a complete playlist on organizational behavior. I will just post the link in the description and you can go through it. So let's begin this topic, and that's called framework of organizational behavior. So let's discuss a brief introduction about the topic. So organizational behavior is the study of behavior which is not visible. Some theories are developed which will give a framework to understand, predict and manage the behavior in the human being in the organization. We need to understand one thing, that organizational behavior is a study of behavior of human beings, which is obviously a part of which is visible, whereas the other part of it is not visible. For example, what people feel, what people think is not visible, but how do people act and how do they behave, that is completely visible. So that is the reason why we need certain framework, we need certain theories which will help us to understand organizational behavior or the human behavior in the organizational setting. Even though one cannot see or observe thinking, still developing concepts related to thinking and using the concept to explain behavior is required in psychology. So obviously we know that organization behavior is derived from psychology, and that is the reason why we need to understand that how do people think, how do people feel, and how do they behave, what are their perception, what are their personality, how do they learn, and all these things. For studying all these things, we need a framework, we need some theoretical background, and that is the reason why we have three framework in organizational behavior. The one is called the cognitive framework, the second one is called the behavioristic framework, and third one is called as the social cognitive framework. So let's discuss each one of them in detail now. Let's talk about the first one, and that is called cognitive framework. So cognition means mental action or the process of acquiring knowledge. It can be understood through thought, experience and senses. So cognition basically means any kind of information which we collect, or it is a kind of mental action, it is a kind of mental processing, it is a process of acquiring knowledge, and which helps you in building your thoughts, which helps you in building your knowledge through your senses, right? So the framework is simply the basic structure or the building block of any system. So it basically works like your whole system, how a human body, so it more acts like a building block of a complete system of human thought process, right? So the framework gives a robust yet flexible structure which provides us an opportunity to build something new and innovative. So this framework is a little bit more robust in nature. At the same time, it is very flexible also, so that we can understand and we can know that how people thought process is really working. And more importantly, it helps you and it provides an opportunity for the researchers to develop something new based on studying the behavior of the people, right? So the cognitive framework is based on the concept of the expectancy of the human being. That means what people expect from anything. Second is the demand of human being. That means what are the various needs of human beings and what are their demands. That is also another thing. And third is what is their intention of the human being. So these are the three things that is called EDI. So it is called expectancy, it is called demand and intention. These three things are something which is the base of this framework. If we use this to represent the cognitive framework, it simply means that every individual set his goal and he also knows the behavior will take him to achieve the goal. So what people do, they frame a goal and then they keep on pushing themselves towards that goal, and in the process they behave differently or they behave in a way so that they can achieve that particular goal. So everybody wants to achieve their goal, and that is why that's keep their motivation also going, and that is the reason why we always behave in certain way to achieve that goal. So what are the benefits and uses of this cognitive framework? The benefit is that it helps you in analyzing the perception, personality, motivation, the decision making of human being. So anything which is related to their thought processing, anything related to their decision making, anything related to information processing, you can easily study through this cognitive framework. Let's talk about the second framework, and that is called the behavioristic framework. So the behavioristic framework was used by or pioneered by the famous theorist called as Ivan Pavlov, which has given the classical conditioning theory, and John B. Watson, Skinner. There are so many people who have contributed to this particular framework, right? This helps you in studying the behavior of the human being, which is visible, that is studying the mind, which is elusive in nature. So one thing we need to understand, that in the cognitive model, what we were doing, we were studying the mind of the people. We were studying the thought process, which is not visible, right? On the other side, when we talk about the behavioral model, we are talking about something which is very visible in nature, and you can easily know that how people are behaving. So they always believed that Pavlov, Watson, Skinner, they always believed that we must study something which is visible in nature and we can easily predict it, rather than studying something which could be very elusive in nature, right? The concept of behavioralistic framework can be clearly explained with the help of stimulus and response. Like we have already studied the concept of stimulus and response. You can go and study that classical conditioning theory. I'll just explain in very nutshell that stimulus is something which helps you in seeking any kind of response. Stimulus can be an object, it can be a place, it can be a people, it can be anything which affects your senses and generates some kind of response. So stimulus is a force of action or motivation or response of reaction of behavior, just like dog and SR concept. We have already studied that Pavlov theory, the classical conditioning theory. Dog was offered meat with the rang of the bell, and every time, and later on what happened with the rang of bell, the dog started salivating. So this was the concept, right? So behavioral study is more about the study of stimulus and response. If you offer something, the people will respond. If you provide people with something, they will behave in a certain way. Future behavioristic theories like Behave Skinner developed this concept by considering the environmental consequences which lead to a certain behavior. So we also know that Skinner has given this theory of operant conditioning theory, where he said that people always look for environmental consequences before behaving. For example, if I am doing any kind of work and we find a positive response from the people around us, we behave in the same way again and again. On the other side, if we are doing something and people are giving us a negative consequence, people are saying that you are not doing it well, just like we're singing a song and people are saying that you don't sing well, then people will stop singing, right? They will curb those behavior in which they are not getting positive responses. So our behavior is basically an outcome of the environmental consequences. It could be a positive consequences also, and it can be a negative consequences also. Sinner advocates that behavior is not the outcome of stimulus alone. It is an outcome which depends on the contingent environmental consequences of the behavior. So as Pavlov said and Watson said that behavior is more an outcome to any stimulus, but Skinner added one more thing to it, that it is an outcome of not just stimulus but also the environmental consequences. In this way, the Skinner added a little more to the behavioralistic framework. This means that human can project different behavior in the same stimulus and exhibit response depending upon the environmental consequences. And that is the reason why with providing with the same stimulus also, sometimes people behave in a different way, because they predict the environmental consequences in a different way, and that is where their behavior also and that is the reason why their behavior is also different. Overall, it can be said that behavioral framework based on observational behavior and observational environmental variables. So in this way, they concluded that if anybody is working in the behavioralistic framework of organizational behavior, they must study the observed behavior, that is through stimulus response, or they should also study at the same time the environmental stimulus or the environmental consequences. Let's talk about the third framework, and that is called the social cognitive framework. So social cognitive framework explains the human behavior in terms of continuous reciprocal interaction among cognitive behavior and environmental influences. So if you look at the third framework, you will see it is the combination of the first and second one. Right, it is the combination of cognitive plus behavioristic, because what you see on one side, you have personal factors. These are your motivation, personality, perception, your learning. These are your personal factor. On the other side, you have environmental factors which are not in your control, and your behavior is basically an interaction of your personal factor, environmental factor. So it is a continuous interaction between these three variables, and that is why we behave in different ways, in different situations, in front of different people, in different circumstances. So our behavior keeps on changing. It means that along with the cognitive and external situation, the experiences faced through our past events determines what a person becomes, and this will create an impact on subsequent behavior. So apart from your cognitive and external stimuluses or externally consequences, we also learn from our past experience. We also understand from past experience that okay, we have done something in our past and it has given us some positive or maybe some negative consequences, and then we tend to repeat or may not repeat that same behavior because we believe that this has already given us a positive or maybe a negative effect. So we need to understand that it is not only about your personal factor or the external factor, it is also about your experiences, your past experiences. So there are certain things which we need to consider in the social cognitive framework. The first point is the person and the environment situation do not function as an independent unit. That means personal factors and environmental, they are not independent, they are basically interdependent. They're interdependent on each other, but in the conjunction with the behavior itself, reciprocally interacting in the determining the behavior. So we need to understand that all these three framework, your personal factor, your social factor, and your behavior, they keep on interacting and determine your behavior at the same time. It means that the cognitive variable and the environmental variables are relevant. That means we need to understand that as it is the combination of first and second framework, so cognitive variable also as well as the environmental variable, they both are very, very important. But at the same time, the past experiences which we generate is also important, because it partly determines what the person become and what he can do or he cannot do. So in this way, these are the three frameworks which explains organizational behavior, and whatever we study in organizational behavior, it comes under these three frameworks. I hope you understood this particular topic. So thanks for watching. If you really like my channel, do like, subscribe and share. Do join my Telegram channel. I will be posting all my resources over there and you can download it from there. So thanks for watching. We'll be meeting in the next session very soon.